When it comes to talking about Gotham's Joker storyline throughout the 5 seasons, I think it's fair to say we all have our own versions lined up in our head. Parts we enjoyed from the Gotham series with the way they ultimately paved it out for Jay, parts we didn't so much enjoy with various aspects that were handled, and just perhaps, various roadmaps we all have planned out in our head, which is just much easier to do in retrospect when looking back on the series. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about what Gotham could have potentially done if they had full permission for the Joker. Now, I've already done a video which I'll leave in the cards above in a similar vein to what we're discussing today, which is all about how I believe Gotham should have done the Joker. So this video will also touch upon some of what I said in that for context, just in case you haven't seen it, but let's just delve deeper into a world where, what if they did actually have no limitations for the show whatsoever in using the actual character of the Joker. So first of all, I do want to say that I think a large chunk of what they did would be kept the same, initially that is. So, let's start at the very beginning with Jerome Valeska, when he debuted in Gotham in season 1, episode 16, The Blind Fortune Teller. I hope I'm not forgetting that one. I don't feel like I have to really emphasize anymore the chills this gave many fans when we got that interrogation scene and how many possibilities I thought that could come to fruition down the road as we were literally only in the first season of the show. And for a long while things remained very exciting for his character, but then there were road bumps, only then to be extremely excited with the foot on the gas, so to speak, at full blast, and then another road bump in the fandom, so to speak, because of what happened on the show, which you may feel differently about, because with the ultimate death of Jerome, paved the way for the short-lived new iteration of the Joker character into the very latter of the series, Jeremiah, which I know many of you prefer and will likely continue to leave some comment on this video saying something of the like, which I totally get. Jeremiah was arguably the much more stylistic Joker, with his best version coming out in season 5, which just felt like a huge improvement on his more subtle, chilling approach in season 4 in every way. But if Gotham truly had no worries about limitations, I'm not so sure Jeremiah would have been where things would have gone. Gotham during the course of the show always felt as though it handled Cameron Monaghan's appearances as putting one foot in front of the other, meaning that they were always writing it as they went along, and I'm sure that they did have a couple of bullet points they wanted to get to when discussing the character, but it was, fairly convoluted and at least heavily displayed as such on screen by the ends of the arcs, and just most certainly felt as though there was a lack of a well thought out roadmap by the end of it all. However though, in their defense, they had a dilemma here, a character they introduced in season 1 which hit crazy gold with the fans, which brought in heavy success to the show, but also the very hard task of trickling that character along to keep that loyal fandom invested, all while never fully having that permission for the character to embrace the identity it so obviously mirrored, which, as a result created a conundrum, and as a result of that, various hiccups throughout the series to both the satisfaction and disappointment of many in the fandom, but they had to do the best with what they had. Many will even say that Jerome and Jeremiah, or just Cameron Monaghan's involvement in the series, heavily carried the show, and I don't say that to put down the other plots in the show or the characters, as I'm a fan who enjoyed most aspects of the show, but I know for a fact through engaging with the fandom for many years now that there were so many who just simply watched for that little extra fix of the Joker mythos that Gotham was trying to explore with the extraordinary talent of Cameron Monaghan on display each and every year, and there's no way in hell that Gotham, the show itself, didn't realize that. So with that in mind, I feel like Jerome would have been quite the continued evolution throughout the series. I feel like the hard turns that the series took with Cameron Monaghan's characters, for example, like his death in the beginning of season 2, then the resurrection by Dwight in season 3, and then the death in season 4 again, were mostly just a result of trying to trickle it along and figure out a way that they could still tease the continuation of the Joker mythos in Gotham without ever really getting there until that final episode. I do believe at some point in the series though that the showrunners and writers probably did roadmap out the long haul with the Jeremiah twist, as the whole time it was likely their main goal to figure out how they can keep Cameron Monaghan in the show without ever giving the Joker identity to either character until that heavily implied finale of season 5, much to what John Stevens would still like to think, as there still being a guy out there, but screw that. But with that in mind, and by the way, I kept talking about those aspects to maintain context as to why things went the way they did, because I do imagine a Gotham where Jerome would have just kept continuing to grow into the same anarchic, chaotic direction he seemed to step up in each and every season. So up until season 4, Bruce Wayne and Jerome Valeska both shared that relationship that could mirror the future Bat and Joker one day, and some may not agree, but I was perfectly okay with the new steps taken that these two former versions of themselves would know each other before their future aliases. So we had Jerome before his first death holding Bruce Wayne as hostage, and then especially during that carnival scene with the mirrors with Jerome versus Bruce, which only taught Bruce more lessons that he would take into his caped days. But it was clear, I might not be detailing every bullet point here, but Jerome and Bruce definitely had a connection, despite how much or how little either of them wanted it. But in season 4, that somewhat connection between the two was tossed aside, almost unnaturally so, for the twin arc, with Jerome wanting to find Xander Wilde. So I think it's fairly obvious that this is the focal turning point in the tale of Gotham's Joker story, because things could have gone very differently in the series from here. But if Gotham was given full permission, I do want to acknowledge that I don't think that this really means a show where things would have gone completely differently, or that he would have been called the Joker from season 2 onwards. No, I mean, not at all. So if they had full permission from the get-go, maybe Jeremiah wouldn't have come to fruition in the story, because they may have felt like they wanted to do a long road development with the kid who unveiled his inner madness in the interrogation room with Jim Gordon, leading up to that conclusion of where he would become the Clown Prince of Crime at the very end of the show, given the 10-year time jump. And you could implement subtle changes, by the way. I mean, I'd love to hear yours in the comments, but for example's sake, such as you could rule out the season 2 death, and you can insert the storyline of the Maniac still, and as a result, let's just say because of that, he was just apprehended by the GCPD instead of getting killed by Theo Galavan. Then in season 3, perhaps there could have still been a cult following who, instead of reviving him, since in this version he didn't die, committed to breaking Jerome out instead, because they saw Jerome hold Bruce Wayne hostage on a news report in a similar way to it popping up on the TV screens, but, you know, without him dying. So moving this alongwards, after the breakout from Dwight and the cult, he still got up to some crazy things, such as the carnival and the face-off with Bruce in the mirror room, and then he landed in Arkham Asylum, and so when it came to season 4, he still broke out with the horribles, such as the Mad Hatter and Scarecrow, but instead of introducing the Jeremiah storyline, they just built further and further upon Jerome's journey to the Clown Prince of Crime, which I feel like we were given little teasers for in season 4, which just makes this in my imagination a bit easier to almost continue it from this point, such as when he flicked that Joker card towards Penguin in Arkham, or this new blend of Scarecrow's gas that was essentially the Joker's toxin that made people laugh themselves to death. So that could have just been kept in, but not to just mention the way Jerome and his character traits and attributes just carried himself in such a way which was just definitely a great reflection of an anarchic Joker that just built more and more each and every season. So my point there is, now with us being in season 4 of this, version of if they did have full permission and a few things along the way were slightly tweaked, of course they could have written something crazy that the Joker would do for Jerome to carry out upon the city in season 4. I mean, we had Bruce approaching the steps, which took him leaps and bounds towards his Dark Knight days, so perhaps Jerome's crazy plan to do bigger and better in season 4 after breaking out of Arkham would have just made Bruce capitalize on saving the city even more. So bottom line, this could have just been done in 1,000 ways. The Joker is unpredictable, and Jerome in this scenario is that guy, not Jeremiah, just not quite there yet. So to build upon that even further, perhaps he blows up the clock tower just like Jeremiah did, gasses a bunch of people with the new toxin, and even though Jerome was mad already, perhaps there was another showdown with Bruce again at the climax of the season where Jerome gets dosed in a similar way to the gas that he made for Jeremiah, which didn't kill him but was designed to unlock his real self. Maybe with Gotham evolving the connection between Bruce and Jerome throughout the previous seasons, Gotham could have just had Jerome make the exact same present that he did for Jeremiah, but instead it was intended for Bruce, and as a result of the confrontation, somehow it comes into contact with Jerome and he just goes to the next step of crazy, beyond anything we could even possibly imagine for an explosive Jerome in season 5. I mean, sure, he had some scars already, but let's just say this could have made him much more paler, like, Jeremiah pale levels, and could have turned his scarred lips permanently red or something. And instead of just trying to kill Bruce and toy with him as he's done in previous seasons, maybe Gotham could have just used that Jeremiah plot in season 5 for Jerome, realizing that Bruce is his best friend. And in so doing, mirrors a similar season 5 with Jerome recreating the night of Bruce's parents' death. And even lines that Jeremiah said, such as, "Without me, you're just a joke," without a punchline, would have felt a lot more deserving if that was Jerome stood there, not a character who has only had some brief history with Bruce. I mean, do you not think that makes a bit more sense? But with all that in mind, and the 10-year time jump featuring Jerome after his dip in the chemical vat, and insert your own design there for that, by the way, because I'm not going to get into that, I just feel like it would have concluded in a way which would have spanned a character's arc throughout all the seasons of Gotham, to then finally give him the persona we've all been waiting for him to adopt. It just would have felt a lot more fulfilling to me personally, despite how much I enjoyed Jeremiah's version of the Joker, and even more so in other ways. I mean, mainly the design and wardrobe, but you get what I'm getting at here. I just feel like it would have been more deserving for Jerome, and borderline, if there was full permission from the beginning, which is the point of this video, I feel like it could very well have been a direction they would have gone and chosen to stick with just one character, and maybe they just would have had this long, overarching arc for that one guy. But in conclusion, this is, after all, the character who sold you in that first interrogation scene with Jim Gordon. He's the one who, while you were enjoying the seasons of the show, you deep down just couldn't wait even more so for the next update in where things were headed for Jerome with the apparent destiny towards the Joker. And hey, what if we actually got that? And I truly think that is where things probably would have gone if Gotham had no restrictions, no issues with using the Joker's name from the very beginning. But hey, I could be wrong.